Hello and welcome to this After Effects Certification Preparation series of videos. I'm Luisa Winters. In this video, I'd like to start with Objective 3. Objective 3. And Objective 3 is about the composition structure, such as layers, managing the compositions, and having efficient workflows. And I'd like to start by going over Objective 3.1a, which is to recognize the different types of layers in the timeline panel. So let's go into After Effects and let's get us started. Okay, in After Effects, I'm going to make this a little bit wider so that you can read the names of the compositions a little bit better. And now I'm going to expand the compositions folder. Obviously, I have the project that came with your exercise files open. If you have not downloaded these files, please go ahead and do so now. The link is in the description of this video. I'm going to make this column here a little bit wider so that we can read the names a little bit better. All right, so in here, do you see this composition called footage, text, solid, shape, camera, adjustment, etc., etc.? Let's go ahead and open that composition. To open it, simply double-click it here in the project panel, and it opens in the timeline. This is a good example of what the different types of layers are here in After Effects. I'm going to make this timeline a little bit taller so that we can see it better. The first thing I want you to notice are the icons that are to the left of the name of the layer. This one here has the same icon as this, the Create New Composition. This is a pre-composition, and a pre-composition is the same as a composition inside of another composition, which is another name for nesting. So when you have one composition and you put it inside of another one, that's called nesting. This layer here is a null object, this is a light, this is an adjustment layer, this is a shape layer, solid, text, footage, and audio only. So I'm going to start from the bottom up. The first one here is an audio only layer. Notice that it's called drums, and that's not my indication of why I know this is an audio only, but it's because there is no eyeball. See it? There is no eyeball here. So all I have is a little loudspeaker, and that is my visual indication that, hey, this is an audio layer. And in fact, if I use this solo icon here, do you see how nothing happens? That's because there is no visual component to this particular layer. So audio only. This one here is footage, meaning that it is a video. And, I named it, this is footage, etc., etc., and I can solo it. And you see that that video file with branches and leaves. I'm going to unsolo that. This is a text layer. And right now, I can't see any of the text because it's being covered by other layers. So when I solo something, like if I solo this, see by clicking on this little icon here, it hides everybody else except for this. But I could also click and drag to make the layers above it invisible so that I can see the text. And notice it just says this is text, and I know that it is a text layer because of that T icon that is to the left of the name. And by the way, notice that I have a VLC player icon to the left of these names. You may see something different in your system. And the reason why I see that is because that is my default player for those type of files. If I had a different player as the default on my system, then I would see the icon, the logo, the icon representation of that app. I'm going to go on to the solid. We use solids a lot in After Effects, and we use them as placeholders, we use them as adjustment layers, we use them as holders for masks. There is a myriad of reasons to use a solid, and the way to get a solid is by going Layer, New, Solid. But notice the shortcut, which is Control Y on Windows, which is Command Y on the Mac. So we use this shortcut quite a bit. And while I don't necessarily encourage you to learn all the shortcuts at once, they do help. They do save you time. So if you can just learn one a week, in less than a year, you will have all of the shortcuts that you need to really accelerate your After Effects work and take it to the next level. Alrighty, so solids. A solid layer, when you go to Layer New Solid, is going to present you with this dialog. In here, you can tell it to be any size you want. You can tell it to lock the aspect ratio. You can tell it to make it the comp size. By default, it's going to be that. And then, of course, you can change its color. You can name it anything you want, etc., etc. So I'm not really going to create one here. I'm just going to cancel out of it. Alrighty, so going up, right? I'm going to make this visible. This is a shape layer. Shape layers have unique characteristics in After Effects. They are truly unique. Let me just show you this really quickly. I'm going to create a new composition, so Control N, because I'm on Windows, and I'm going to call it Shapes. And this is not necessarily a lesson just on shape layers, so I'm not going to take you through everything that is to know on shape layers, but I'm going to take you through some things. And the main thing is this: if no layer is selected, so nothing is selected in the timeline, and then you draw a mask, you use one of these masking tools and you draw something, that's a shape layer. Notice the icon to the left of its name. See how it looks like a little star? And notice that in addition to transform, and anything with a pixel will have transform. And transform is always, always, always anchor point, position, scale, rotation, and opacity. So in addition to transform, now we have something called contents, and one content, which is the rectangle one. I can keep on adding to that shape layer. See, if the shape layer is selected and I draw something else, see how now I have an ellipse 1, and if I draw another ellipse, I have an ellipse 2, and I can just draw something with a pen tool and see how that's called shape. Each one of those has their own characteristics. And right now, everybody is red, but if I expand any one of these, see stroke fill, I can make one of them, I don't know, blue, whatever, right? And I can change the characteristics of those individual components of that shape layer individually. So that's a shape layer. I'm going to delete the composition because we don't really need it. And of course, it's giving me the warning. I'm like, that's cool. All right. The next thing is an adjustment layer. An adjustment layer is a layer whose effects affect everybody under it. So see how this adjustment layer is here? It's going to affect everybody under it. So to demonstrate this a little bit better, I'm going to create a new composition again. This time I didn't name it, and I'm going to add all of the video files to that composition. And there it is. I'm going to make them smaller, like yay, even smaller maybe. And in a later lesson, I'm going to show you what shortcuts I'm using for this, but it's S for scale, just so that you know. And here I have these guys, right? So there you go. It doesn't really matter. Now I'm going to add an adjustment layer. And remember, an adjustment layer is a solid. It's the same thing as a solid. So let me add an adjustment layer first, and then I'm going to add a solid. So layer, new adjustment layer, right? Any effects that I add to this adjustment layer is going to affect everybody underneath. So let's just say I want to do a Gaussian blur, right? And I'm going to add it to that, and I'm going to blur it considerably, right? So everybody under it is now blurred. And now I go, oh no, you know what? The branch and leaves, I don't want that to be blurred. I can put it under it and see how now everybody but the branch and leaves is blurred, that's an adjustment layer. An adjustment layer is a layer whose effects affect everybody under it. But the reason why it needs to be a solid is because the size matters. If I make that solid smaller, do you see how it affects only where the pixels of the solid are? It's the same thing if I mask it. So if I go back to 100%, and in fact, I'm going to reset position as well, and any property that can be keyframed, in other words, that has that little stopwatch to the left of its name, can be reset if you just right-click it and then choose reset, right? So I can now mask this, I can animate it, I can do whatever. So if I mask this like yay, do you see how only the what has pixels of the solid is affecting the layers underneath? Now, I told you that this was a solid, and I'm absolutely right. So I'm going to add a solid this time. Layer, new, solid. The color of the solid doesn't matter. I'm going to name it adjustment, whatever. And now I'm going to click OK. And of course, it's a solid. So, how come? Wait, this is not an adjustment layer. It actually is if I just turn that switch on. Do you see this guy that looks like a yin-yang, half black, half white? This is the switch to make that layer into an adjustment layer. Boom, done. This is now an adjustment layer. If I add the Gaussian blur to this and I blur everybody, there you go. That is an adjustment layer. All right. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to delete that comp because I don't need it. And let's keep on going up. This is a light layer. This is illuminating different aspects of the composition. And I want you to notice that if a layer is not 3D, the lights do not affect it. So how do I know if a layer is 3D? Well, do you see this? Toggle switches and modes. There you go. Notice that I have a 3D layer here, which is the solid. Do you see how the solid gets affected by the light, but the star doesn't? So that is because the star is not 3D. The moment I make that star 3D, now the star will be affected by the light. All right, so light, layer, new, light. You can add as many lights as you want. There are different types of light. This is not a lesson on lights. I'm just telling you this is a light layer. And these only affect 3D layers. And in fact, you could tell a layer not to accept light. So for example, if I go to both of these 3D layers and I expand, and again, this is not a lesson on 3D, I'm just telling you what layers the lights affect. So I can go under material options, and do you see here where it says accept lights that is on? I can turn it off. And now that layer will not accept, interact anything with the light. So, just because a layer is 3D and you have lights doesn't mean that that layer will be affected by it. You can turn it on and off. Alrighty, let's keep on going. This is a null object. A null object is so useful, but sometimes it's difficult to explain. A null object is a layer of nothingness. It just does nothing. It's a placeholder. It's a placeholder for a myriad of things. Imagine for a second, and I'm going to create a new composition. I'm going to call it parenting. No, this is not a lesson on parenting. I'm just explaining one of the uses of a null object. And I'm just going to draw, say, a circle here. And look at that anchor point. I hate that. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to go to Edit, Preferences, General. Remember, on the Mac is under After Effects Preferences, General. And do you see here where it says Center Anchor Point in New Shape Layers? Boom, I'm going to turn that on. It just annoys me that that's not on by default. Anyway, here we go. See? Ta-da! I'm going to deselect, And I'm going to add another one, maybe a different color. There you go. Now I'm going to add a star, and well, that's not a star. Let me add a proper star. There you go. And I'm going to make it yellow, because stars should be yellow. Alrighty, so if I want all of these layers to behave a certain way together, then I can parent them to a null object. So I can go layer, new, null object, and I can select all of these guys and see this parent and link column here. I can just say, hey, the parent is the null. And now I can rotate the null. And do you see how everybody rotates around the anchor point of the null? The same for scale, see? Scale, rotation. So again, this is not a lesson on parenting, but know that parenting affects all of the transform properties except for opacity. More on that later. Again, not a lesson on parenting. But all of that is possible because I parented all three of those layers to a null object. I can also use null objects to help me with expressions. Of course, expressions are way beyond what the text will cover, but you know, I might cover one or two in subsequent movies. So anyway, that's a null object. It's a layer of nothingness that is a placeholder for effects, parenting, expressions, expression controls, anything like that. So at the end of the day, they become really, really, really useful. Alrighty, so here's my parenting composition. I'm gonna delete it because I don't need it. And finally, I have a pre-comp in here, which I'm just going to turn it on. A pre-comp, like I mentioned before, is a composition inside of a composition. So if I double click this, it actually opens that composition. So this composition is called branch and leaves. And in here, it's called a pre-comp. So how do you pre-compose something? How do you nest something? Well, you know, I have other compositions here. If I drag this here and put it in the timeline, that's a nest. That's a nest because I put this composition inside of a different composition. And if I create a new composition, and I'm just going to use the default name, and I will put, I don't know, these video files. Again, I'm going to make them smaller, you know, and just move them like yay. Maybe I want to pre-compose them, right? I can select all of them, and now I can go to Layer, Pre-compose. And by the way, selecting all, we've said this many times, is Control-A on Windows, which is Command-A on the Mac. Pre-compose, name your new pre-composition, anything you want. So anything you want. Click OK, and this is now a new composition in the project panel, and it put it in here in this comp 1. So it's the same thing, a pre-composition, a nesting, however you want to do it. If you just want to select all the layers and then go layer pre-compose, you can do it that way. And of course, now we can animate this however we want, and because they are just considered one layer, they all go together. So pre-comp. And this brings me to the end of this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.